Hello, my friends. Have you ever had something to say and then went silent? Have you ever stumbled through a conversation to think later, oh, that's what I should have said? Do you ever feel like there are times when your message gets lost in translation? Well, get ready to level up your communication skills. I'm Kathy Riley, your host and communications expert with over 25 years in litigation and another 15 as an entrepreneur, working with teams and groups to help create success. Our goal here is to share tools, systems, and techniques guaranteed to shift the way that you connect with others. From mastering the art of tough conversations to cultivating a mindset that screams confidence, you will learn how to break the bad habits of communications. So today I'm excited. We have a fantastic guest today, Mr. Tim Salmans. He is a pioneer of experiential training with over 3 decades of experience. Through his company's 3G Professional Solutions and Insights for Choice, he delivers immersive simulations and workshops that enhance human connection, professional growth, and leadership. Leveraging his diverse background, including acting, emergency medical training, insurance, financial certifications, and executive coaching, Tim empowers professionals across various industries to excel in leadership and personal empowerment. Welcome, Mr. Tim. I am so excited thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is so good. This is so good. So you and I have known each other a little over a year, maybe even pushing 2.
Yeah.
Um, and both as business owners dealing with humans. And I love that you say you study human beings for a living. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
What I mean by that, it started as a kid. I didn't realize I was doing it. It was more of a survival mechanism as a kid, but I watched people and I studied them, and people who say that they like to people watch. Well, I didn't only people watch. I was always looking for what's their intention, what's their influencers, how are they making the decisions they're making, and it kind of became a game because you would start to kind of bet yourself, like, I bet they're going to do this. And then about half the time or 3/4 of the time they actually do it. You're like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. So when I went into college and wasn't quite sure what I was doing, I went in and got a degree in communications, but it was an emphasis in performance technical theater. And that was all about, you know, what are the motivators? I mean, if you go back into theater and film and all that kind of stuff, it's like, it's really part of the human expression, and it reflects back to the populace. And so for me, it was all about when we're all performing. Shakespeare said, the world is a stage. We're just mere players upon it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's, studying people has been a big part of my world. And it's just what I've been doing on the backside while I've been doing other businesses, careers, things like that.
Yeah. And people like we are all performing, right?
Yeah.
That every day we wake up, we may not feel like we should be doing what we're doing, but we do it anyway, right? You've got kids, right?
Yeah, I have two stepdaughters.
So it's what I've told my daughter growing up is like sometimes it's a suck it up buttercup kind of moment. You got to keep trudging on and and just show up like you feel like it. It's
Right.
almost so for somebody who's an introvert, that's me, big time introvert, knowing that I have to schedule time to recharge when I do stuff. I put a hat on, for lack of a better word, when I show up to network or when I show up to speak. So there's a shift, right? Internally, externally, and how I show up that could be linked to it's acting.
Yeah.
It is to some degree acting. That's part of what you help individuals do, right? Is showcase their genius through performing and communicating?
Well, what I'll say is this is by doing what I was doing growing up, what I realized was I was a performer. And I was a performer not necessarily as an actor, but in life, like what we're talking about. The problem is what I noticed is I was a performer because everyone else around me was a performer. But when it came down to probably my mid 20s, I had the career, I had the title, I had things that wow, I'm accomplished. I got out of college, got my degree, I have this successful, and was completely still a train wreck, if you will. I mean, it was like I wasn't fulfilled. I was stressed. I was not. And what I realized was that because I had been a performer my whole life, I didn't know who I was.
Oh,
And that's one thing that, quite honestly, that was, a dark night of the soul. I actually had to go through my own soul death at that moment to realize, and I went through a lot of training and confronted a lot of, assumptions and beliefs. And what I realized is a lot of us, we're programmed, we're conditioned. We live in a world that says, go be like this, go do this. And so we go do that. And we practice on how are we going to do it. How is that any different from you get a stage, you get a script, you say, hey, go rehearse, keep rehearsing. Right now, go perform. It's like that's what we do in our everyday life. But what's behind all that? We still as artists, we still as individuals work on the mechanism. You said something that was very powerful. You know that you're an extreme introvert. So you have to know your mechanism. I'm an introvert. I get recharged here. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to engage and I'm going to let some of this energy go here. I'm going to let some of this energy go there. That's strategic. Most people aren't that strategic.
yeah.
Most people are what I call living in reaction. And when they're living in reaction, they're flying by the seat of their pants, doing the best that they can. And God bless them for doing that. I mean, they're out there, but there's a lot more to us. And so in my arena, I take people to places that actually may honor them where they haven't honored themselves before. I introduce them to patterns that they may have thought were essential to what they were doing, but it's actually a barrier for them getting ahead, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And thank you for sharing that. It's so for those that are listening, okay, and they are in a place where they are constantly they're acting, right? They're showing up, they're behaving in a way for others and not necessarily themselves. Um, and I think you and I talked about this using the word authentic, right? Getting in touch with who our authentic self is. And as an introvert, that was something like I had to know to be strategic about being out there and then what it took to recharge. I had to hit, I had to crash for me to really pay attention. So for somebody who's listening right now who is maybe struggling identifying with their who they really are, right? And their authentic self and are being what they are supposed to be, what's one piece of advice that you would give them? Maybe a tool or something that they could help identify and be more in alignment with themselves. Because I think you and I both know that if we are constantly doing and being somebody for somebody else, we're going to crash and burn like that. We cannot sustain that. So would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People oftentimes they run on empty. I've for
Yeah.
years. So I've done specialized corporate training, these simulations. I've done them for almost 28 years now or longer. And what I oftentimes tell the people who come in and train with me, because we go through this experiential learning, is once we get done and I'm giving them feedback, it's like going, what do you do to care for yourself? How do you charge yourself up? Because, let's think of your cell phone. If you run out into the world and you start charging everybody else's battery, but you haven't charged your own, you're not going to sustain for very long. And that's how a lot of people are in this world. They go, they perform well, but they forget about the most essential thing, which is themselves. We're talking about communication. A big aspect of communication is, what are you saying to yourself? And if you said to yourself what you say to, or if you said to clients what you say to yourself, would they be your client? Right?
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of justifications, and you asked me about one tool, and I'll give you one tool. I go into it. I have a book that's coming out in January, but there's a chapter that we sort of talk about this. And I would say start looking at the labels that you've bought into. Because when I talk about that programming and conditioning that we actually experience and live in every day, and who's ever listening out there who thinks that this is a human experience. It happens to every human being. So you may not identify with this, but it still doesn't mean it doesn't occur in your life. This programming and this conditioning, I would ask your listeners, think of someone in your life. Think of, and I worked in the medical field for 15 years. So think of someone in your life who has a lot of ailments or excuses or reasoning. Who would they be if they didn't have that any longer in their life? Like, it becomes part of their identity. And so we do that to ourselves. We do it on a grand scale, we do it on a minimal scale, but we still do it. And it's when we have these labels that we buy into. And all of a sudden, and I will give you my own story here. Why I know this so deeply was in the first grade, I was given the title of learning disabled. This was before dyslexia. This was before ADD, ADHD, all that kind of stuff. So I was learning disabled, and some schools couldn't handle me because they didn't know how to handle how I learned, because I didn't know how to learn either. And then other schools, I went off and I basically was in a situation where I had to teach myself. So I'm learning disabled, and now I'm teaching myself. It just didn't make sense. It was chaotic.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, that was a big cornerstone of my foundation as to why I became such a performer. I was a chameleon. That's
Oh,
how I became the performer. But I realized that I was running on empty. My battery was like flashing red when I was in my mid 20s, because it was like I had the title, I had the accomplishments, and I was like crashing and burning every day.
oh.
And
Well, thank you.
it's,
Thank you for
it's
sharing that. And then continue.
I was just going to say, and it was, I bought into that label because I learned how to use that label to make it work for me. The problem is it didn't honor me, and I didn't know how to honor myself. If there's something that I do when I work with my clients, is I probably hold them in greater esteem than they know how to hold themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. As humans, I mean, I think oftentimes we are all that way, right? We think so much highly of everyone else than we do of ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned earlier, communication also includes what we say to ourselves. So it's always a fun statistic to talk to people and ask, um, when it comes to communication, what's the percentage of words? When we communicate, that percentage, and it's only 7% is words. Only 7% is the words that we use. The rest is tonality, is breath, it's energy, it's facial expressions, body language. It's all of that put together. So it's interesting, but I also say the layer to that is what we say to ourselves. So, we talk to ourselves at a rate of 4,000 words per minute, which I think is crazy, right? We speak this way to other humans, average 200 to 300 words per minute. So, in our brain, we're a chatty Cathy. And 90% of it is negative, which is why I lovingly call it the itty bitty shitty committee. It's our stinking thinking. We have a lot of that going on up there. So paying attention to that is so powerful. And I love that you bring that to the attention, your client's attention, others' attention, because we have no idea what's running around up in there until we start paying attention and make that shift. So, what would you say to an individual who you know is they're going through that stinking thinking, right? They are struggling with saying something positive to themselves. What would be one piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, I don't know that I mean, I'd probably get around to giving them advice, but the first thing that I would ask them is, what are you getting out of this self-talk? You're getting something out of it. You're getting to be right about how wrong you are. You're repeating what I call generational patterns. See, I'm going to let you know a little secret. And no one else has to believe this, but this is my belief, and it really holds true for me, which is um, I believe that each and every one of us came here with opportunities to grow our souls, to grow the essence that's within us. And a lot of people do not know how to manage that, how to deal with it, or even engage these lessons. And a lot of those people were our parents, were our grandparents, were our great grandparents. They were given opportunities to grow themselves, and they did in some areas and maybe not in others. And what happens is when we don't deal with our lessons, it gets handed down to our kids. This is how I did it, so you can deal with it. You can do it, like, right? And I deal with a number of clients who a lot of times the lessons that they're fighting or bumping up against isn't actually their lesson. It's the lesson their parents handed to them. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that, may not quite understand that, but for the people who do understand it, it's a big deal. It's like, wow, this was the conversation that was around the household. This is the conversation that my parents, this is what it means to be a good person. It's like going, rather than what about honoring who you are as the individual? What about that essence that's in you? What about that divinity? Because each and every one of us, there's something that keeps us taking that next breath. There's something that keeps us, like, a lot of us have what I would call a hidden hope. It's going to get better. Something good's going to happen. So it's there. But then we forget that we actually have hope, because then we're like right about what's not working and that kind of stuff. So it's like, once we actually start to dig into this and you start to learn what your lessons are versus the other lessons that you've just been carrying around, when you can unload those lessons, holy crap, Kathy, do you realize how many people, oh, they got a breath of fresh air. Wait, I have a whole new. So one of the best things that I get out of when I work with my clients is not necessarily what we've worked with them on, but when I see how they process their world more effectively. It's about behavioral change. It's not about you going out and gathering more information.
Oh, I love that. So good. So good. I mean, at the end of the day, what we think about, we bring about,
Yeah.
right? And see, in listening to you, it made me flash back that there, I struggled with my parents for a while, especially my mom, because my mom is my mother's daughter and my grandmother's granddaughter. In that, girls were to be seen and not heard. We were to spend time in the kitchen and doing what I'm doing. There's no way that any of my family would ever be doing this. It was, so I'm stirring the pot in that, and it took a lot of overcoming. And at some point, I had to realize that my mom did the best she could with the information she had.
Yeah. Yep.
And she didn't know any better. But so when you know better, you can do better. And it was, and I'll tell you, it was, wow. I'm where my brain is going with this conversation is it's pretty powerful when you're able to let go of what others have put on you.
Well, they put it on us, and then we take it on, and then we fight to justify our limitations. I've said this for years. It's in my book. You watch people, watch yourself, watch your own internal conversation, or watch other people. People will fight harder for their limitations than stand up for their possibilities.
Ah, and isn't that heartbreaking? that that
Absolutely.
that with the humans. So for those of you that are listening, man, what would you say? Somebody who's holding on to a limitation, what do you say to them right now?
Well, I would say there's something inside you that's had you still hang on. And so for you hanging on, there's something that's stronger inside of you than maybe you've given full credit for. Give yourself the awareness, give yourself the space to even ponder how good you are. Because I'm not here to tell you you're good. I will tell you you're good and stuff like this, but I'm actually going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge your ego inside of you to sit down because we think this is in the book too, but we talk about the ego and how it lives and shows up in our world. And the ego isn't all bad. There are there's part of the ego that is really essential. It's part of your self-sustaining survival. We need that. It's what kept us alive this long, right? But it's once we actually move beyond that essential ego, it goes into what I call the toxic ego. And the toxic ego is about self indulgence. It's about self validation. And it's like if you go into that self, you've bypassed the divine essence, the true warrior, the wise warrior that's within you. And there are so many people out there who have the warrior, but you don't have to go out to battle every day. Be a wise warrior. The wise warrior probably will never have to raise their fists. But some of us, we glorify and we get into that. I'm a warrior. And it's like going, yeah, a warrior with an ego, something to prove. And it's like, if you don't have to prove and you actually start standing up for yourself, you start fighting for the gift that you are, that you've been given, the essence that you are. I'm not here. I tell all my clients, I'm not attached to your outcomes. That's why it helps me to create and guide support. I'm not, I will check my ego on a regular basis to sit down because it's not about what you do. It's about what you honor yourself to create. Because we live in a world that is so focused on doing. I call them the human doings because the
Yeah.
human beings are lost in there. And there are some divine souls out there that have done some really deep work, and they are some amazing beings. We're all amazing beings, but we get so caught up in that doingness. And, for the folks out there that are really hungry for themselves, for, you know, I'm just going where the universe, I think wants me, and to honor people who are ready to be honored. There's a lot of growth and available peace of mind. I mean, that is one thing that I've heard from a lot of clients is they have a newfound sense of peace of mind. I mean, I've worked with people who've gone through trauma. I've worked with people who are just struggling with everyday world. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. If you need that, by all means, go honor yourself and get that. I'm just a soul out here to honor you on a level that maybe you've never known before.
I love that. I love that. And it shows in speaking with your clients and the people that surround you. Um, you walk the walk. And one of the things that popped to mind is, we were talking about what we say to ourselves and owning our worth essentially is it just by being, a gift. The fact how hard it is for us to be conceived in the first place. And the fact that we're here on this earth means that we're a gift and we have a purpose. We just may not know what it is. At least not right now. Some of us do. Some of us understand our purpose. Some of us are still trying to figure it out. But own that space and know that you're worthy. So I often talk about with what we say to ourselves in our head, that if you cannot use those words out loud to a child or to your grandmother, you have no business saying it to yourself. And
I
it's
agree.
just because we get away with so much saying the negative stuff to ourselves. I'm stupid. This always happens. I'm so ridiculous. What was I thinking? And all that stuff will go over and on repeat. But if we would just step into the point where, let's say, this is what I'm saying to myself. Now say it out loud, right? Say it out loud. And then imagine yourself saying it to a child. And then pay attention to how you feel, right? How do you feel telling a child that they're stupid, right? And knowing that if you look at that child, or you look at your grandparent, or you look even at your puppy. I mean, come on, we live in Colorado. We love our animals too. There's just such worthiness just by being present.
I want to add something to that because I agree with what you're saying. Just remember, a lot of people, life is happening to them, right? They're putting in a lot of energy and effort, but really, the undercurrent experience is life is happening to them. And the fact is it's like life is giving you feedback to grow you. It's not here just to be a pain in your ass. It's not here just to be tough on you. It's really giving you something to say, hey, maybe this isn't quite working, you know? And there are some people out there like, you know, might might not be the ideal person that is talking to a child in a way that's not optimal, or talking to, a puppy or something like this. And let's not forget there's some reason as to why that's going on. Like there is a disconnect of love, of self-respect, of consideration that they don't have. And so it's having grace for people who have yet to learn how to have grace.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. So we talked earlier, shifting gears a little bit, not much, about real leadership, leadership, and what that is and what that means. Tell me a little bit about real leadership.
Well, real leadership for me in my world and how I work with my clients, and the clients who actually have the strength to do it, real leadership takes true, honest, authentic vulnerability. Now we live in a world, let's go back to the programming world and the conditioning world. The programming world, we have a lot of people who have a lot of titles and positions of leadership, but they don't emulate, they don't embody, they don't cultivate. They're basically managers of that position. They're not real leaders. Like real leaders are the ones that actually lead from within, who embody, who stand alongside their fellow participants on the path that they're on. And so, we live in this world that's really bought into, oh, this leader's going to do this or that leader's going to do that. I'm like, one of the biggest leaders I like to work with is the leader that's inside the individual. Because when we start to find our own internal leadership and how do we lead for ourselves, um, a little side note. So I had this thought come to me earlier today, and we were going to do this podcast, and so many years ago, many moons ago, mid '90s, I was in downtown Denver, and I got done with a performance one night, and I heard someone scream and yell, and we were right there on 16th Street Mall. And for the listeners who don't know what 16th Street Mall is, this outside mall, and there's a lot of people, right? It's a happening place. And you hear this musician, he was one of the street musicians. He was yelling at somebody who had just stolen all of his money and everything. And I was sitting there with two of my friends, and I was watching this happen, and you hear him yelling, and there's like 100+ people just watching this happen, not doing anything. And I'm like watching him run by people, and no one's helping, no one's doing anything. And it was just like, I turned to my friends, I said, will you hold my bag? I had flip-flops on and I chased this guy down and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to get like stabbed or shot, right? Then
Right.
this guy peels off into this dark alley and I'm like, oh, now I'm really getting crazy here. But I went and I got, I confronted the guy. Luckily, it wasn't a physical altercation, but I confronted the guy. I got the other guy's money back. But the thing that really stood out for me, and this was before I became an EMT and worked in the medical field, was I was like, why did so many people just sit there and watch? And it's the bystander effect.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, someone else is supposed someone else is going to take care of it. Someone else is going to handle it. And it was, it was a little disheartening for me. I don't know if that was my leader or wasn't my leader, but I was like, you know what? This isn't okay in my space. And so I went and did something about it. And that's where the leadership aspect was. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't trying, and believe me, I will tell you right now, we don't need heroes in this world. We need people who will take action. We don't need titles. But I just wanted to say that's when we're talking about leadership, whether it's on a corporate level, whether it's in a family situation, are you honoring the individuals around you and demonstrating? Because most leaders or managers with titles are dictating what your behavior should be rather than encouraging how to show up. Sorry, that was long winded, but
No, that was perfect and so good. It's, I do corporate training as well. And just this week, got really real with the people in the room about, you know, walking the walk and not just talking the talk, and how regardless of where you are in the team, that you need to show up and be active, right? And take steps to move towards that goal and to communicate. So not just not watch, that's well, think somebody else is going to do it. You've got to be full on part of it. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I just want to add one more thing to it though. This is
Yeah.
kind of cool because I didn't do it for any, the chasing the guy down and I came back and I gave the musician was very grateful. I was like, cool, brother, you're good. Um, on the corner was a Subway sandwich shop, and the manager was outside smoking a cigarette when all this went down. And I came back and I said to my friends and like this, and the guy came out of the store at that time. He's like going, did you get the guy? I was like, "Oh, I got his money back and all this." He's like, so he bought me a sandwich. He bought me like, he's like, I can't do anything else, but that was freaking great. I'm going to buy you this. And the thing was, is I was just, I was appreciating, but it was like, I wasn't doing it for anything,
Great.
but the universe gave me back something with this guy, giving me not only a sandwich, but just really, thanking me for that. And that's what it is when you are this real empowered leader, all of a sudden you create an energy that comes back at you.
Yeah.
There's a book out there, and I've listened to it a few times. I consume a lot of books on audio. But it was Tony Shea with Zappos.com,
Yeah.
called Delivering Happiness. And, you know, it's worth reading, it's worth listening to. I mean, he really does a great job of highlighting what worked for him and how he created the culture in his business and how he ran away from the conditioned culture that he kept getting stuck with. So
Yeah. Oh, so good. So good. So let me ask you this. Understanding that leadership comes from within and taking into account, there are things that we're not going to want to do. We're humans, right? We're not always going to feel like it. We just would, we're not. Anybody ever tried to lose weight? There are times it's like, okay, even though I put everything next to the door, it's 5 a.m. Am I going to go to the gym? I don't feel like it. Maybe they hit the snooze. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. What would you say if, or what piece of advice or suggestion would you give to somebody who just, taking it in a leadership role or just in life in general, and they just don't feel like it? How would you suggest someone be self-motivated, help them get self-motivated?
Well, that's different for different people.
Uh-huh.
Some people, some people do need the tough love aspect. Unfortunately, most people get the tough love aspect, and that's probably why they're in such resistance is because of the tough love. And most people, when they do tough love, I'm going to tell you this, their version of tough love is tough is in gigantic letters and love is this little, you know, leftover word. When I'm talking about when you give someone tough love, it's about love should be in gigantic words, gigantic letters, and tough should just be, you know, lowercase. Um, because some people do need that push. Some people do need that. But I mean, I think back to the coaching I went through, through all the sports I played, through the business coaching I've gone through. I mean, it's like it's so commonplace to bust your butt, push it, push harder, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and for certain people in the population, that works. But for a large number of the people, it doesn't because they haven't learned how to have grace for themselves. You know what? Maybe, maybe if you start to learn to have a little bit of grace for yourself, it's like going, okay, yes, I do want to diet and I do want to change, but why? Because if I'm just doing it because I'm told to, or I expect it, or I want to look good, those are all temporary motivators. But it kind of goes back to Simon Sinek's, he you know your why, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I love him and how he presents things in his book. And for years, I've also been like going, that's great and wonderful, but that's still just the crust. Because why is that why important to you? Is it
Yeah.
important to you because society and programming is telling you to do it? I mean, we beat ourselves up all over the place because, yeah, I should be in shape. Why should you? Well, it's a healthy, well, you know what? What if you're a soul that's not meant to live this long? I don't know. This is your path. This isn't anybody else's path. You can have all the doctors, all the wisest people in the world show up and tell you exactly how you should be the most optimal human being. But what are your lessons? See, when we start to go into what our gifts, what our talents, and what our grace is, we start to cultivate a whole new different path for ourselves and from who we thought we knew we should be. Does this make sense?
Oh my gosh, this is so good. This is so good. So I understand that, and you shared with us that you've got a book coming out. So tell us a little bit about the book.
The book's titled Inner Wisdom, Outer Impact, Leading Your Life from the Inside Out. Um, and for those who are out there, this is just I went into college. So what got me through basic school, public school, I played sports. So sports got me through school. But when I went into college, you have to test to go into college, and I tested out. I was basically at like an eighth grade reading level going into college. So my first year was rudimentary, going back through to get me ready to actually do college. I was never a person that was like, I want to write a book. I have to write a book. I got that. And quite honestly, I have another book, but it was a fiction book, and it was from a dream that I had 25 years ago. And it was a fiction book. It's about gargoyles, and my wife still wants me to write that book. But I was like going, that's a whole nother story. But this book, I was not compelled. I don't have to impress anybody. But this book not only came to me, it's actually come through me. The universe just wouldn't stop bringing me the information. It just wouldn't stop downloading. It just wouldn't stop it. And I was like, fine, I will put it out there in the hopes and knowing that the universe has it for whoever the right person or right people are, that this will help them get further down their path in honoring who they are for themselves. This book is about the reader, but this book is just an information book. It is a standalone book, but the truth of the matter is it's a companion to our immersive 3-day workshops. The immersive 3-day workshops is when you actually come into the workshop and we start to really put some of these concepts into practice so that it's not just an idea or a thought that you have. You're like, here's that experience. Oh, okay. Now it starts to come alive. And for me, it's like when you start getting the learning, when you start getting the essence in your actions, in your body, in your behaviors start to grow and change.
Yeah.
So this book is really, I hope it's a gift to whoever benefits from it. And I hope that it really helps. I've been told that it's transformative by people who have edited it, read it. I heard it was a fascinating read by a reader who doesn't make comments on books. So the universe just keeps kind of saying, here, this is. So I'm just saying yes to what came to me, and I hope it blesses whoever benefits from it.
So do we have a release date yet where we can find it on Amazon?
We're doing a big launch in January. We haven't officially locked down the date yet, so just know it'll be probably
Okay.
first or second week of January, but that's when it's coming out. It's virtually ready now, but we're not releasing it around the holidays. We're doing it after the holidays.
Right. Right. You can do campaign and all that good stuff. Be strategic.
Yeah, we want to be strategic, and we also, it's also too, we want to kick off 2025 and say, here, you know what? In spite of everything else that's going around in the world, what are you doing for yourself?
Oh, I can't wait to get it. It's good. It sounds, you've shared so much genius here today. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I've got a couple questions for you,
Yeah.
a little popcorn style, to just, so the listeners can get to know you just a little bit better. And it's also kind of fun. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Morning or night?
Tough one. Night.
Night. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you like sweet or salty?
Oh, I'm sweet. I'm so
Sweet.
sweet.
Yeah. All right. So if you were to have a glorious dinner, would it be at home or would you go out?
Um, that's a loaded question. I'd have to say both because my wife is an amazing cook. So I'd
Good
want,
answer.
I want her to keep cooking amazing food, so I'd say at home. But
Yes, dear.
when we go out, we treat ourselves well.
Nice. All right. If you wanted something yummy and delicious, would you eat it or drink it?
Um, I'd eat it.
Eat it. Uh,
Yeah.
beach or mountain?
Mountain,
Mountain. So
mountain.
summer or winter?
Um, Jeez, that's a hard one. Um, I'll probably say summer. Although we do it up well in winter.
You like them all.
Oh yeah, I four seasons. I love. That's why I love living in Colorado.
Right? We truly get the seasons. It's awesome.
Sometimes
Uh,
in one day.
all right, if you were to read a book, paper or Kindle?
Oh, paper.
Paper. Love it. And then movie, would you watch a movie or watch a series?
Oh, movie. My wife and I fight over that one. She likes her series, and I'm like, ah. So, how about you? Movie or series?
I just finished a series and I'm kind of done. So I'm ready for a movie.
Yeah.
So I finally watched How I Met Your Mother.
Oh.
And it's an oldie but a goodie. And I very much enjoyed the storyline and the acting and the humor, and it was, yeah, it's a bit juvenile, but I enjoyed it. But now I'm like I'm done, right? So I'm ready for a movie where 90 minutes, 2 hours.
Juvenile's good though. It lets your inner teenager, have fun. So that's
Oh
good.
yes, yes, and I love comedies. If you can make me laugh, I'm hooked. Whether it's reading or watching, I love integrating humor as much as possible to everything that we do.
Awesome.
So I love that. So for people who want to get in touch with you, follow you, what would be the best place for that to happen?
Best place to get in touch with me would be at my website, which is tim at insightsforchoice.com, or just go to insightsforchoice.com. But that's my email is tim at insightsforchoice.com. Um, another, I have a little podcast that goes on. It's just an audio podcast, but it's called Powerful and Unpolished. And we play with all different kind of ideas. Sometimes I have guests on, sometimes I do this personal pontification for a while, but it's for what it is. I mean, it's just to stimulate thought and questions. And other than that, yeah, please, if you're interested in the book or knowing more about it, go to our website. We're going to have information there about that. So,
Love it. Love it. Well, we appreciate having you today. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Breaking Bad Communication. Thank you, listeners, for being here and tuning in. But before we sign off, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you heard today and it resonates with you, please share it, repost it, send it to your friend. Know this: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your communication. And as you head back out into the world, remember every conversation is your chance to shape your life and the lives of others. Whether it's a tough talk or casual chat, be clear, be intentional, and listen like it matters because it really does. The better you communicate, the more your life aligns with what you truly want. So go get out there, own your voice, make your words work for you. Giddy up.